Have you ever felt that shiver down your spine, as if you were being watched? Today, you will discover what hides in the shadows of the small town of San Miguel. The gravedigger, Don Luis, has disappeared, and the blame seems to point to the old cemetery, shrouded in mystery and rumors of curses. But is this just superstition, or is there something darker lurking? In this video, you will delve into a story that defies skepticism. What would you do if you witnessed something that cannot be explained? Stay until the end and discover secrets that can change your view of what's around you. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange hue over the quaint town of San Miguel. I met my friends in the central square, where the air buzzed with anxious whispers. It felt like the whole town was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. "Did you hear about Don Luis?" Miguel asked, his brow furrowed. "He's been missing for days. People are saying the cemetery is cursed." Sophia shivered, wrapping her arms around herself as if to ward off a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Cursed? That's just superstition," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. "He was always so kind to us when we were kids. I can't believe he'd just disappear like that." "Maybe he got spooked by something," Tomas chimed in, his voice dripping with skepticism. "You know how folks love to exaggerate. It's probably just a misunderstanding." But even as he spoke, I could see a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "Misunderstanding or not, we can't just sit here and do nothing," I declared, feeling a rush of determination. "We should investigate. If something is really wrong, we need to find out what happened to him." "Are you out of your mind?" Tomas exclaimed, running a hand through his hair. "The cemetery at night? That's a terrible idea." "It's the best idea we have," I shot back, feeling my heart race at the thought of stepping into the unknown. "Don Luis deserves our help. We owe him that much." Miguel nodded in agreement. "All right, I'm in. Let's meet here at dusk." As twilight descended, casting eerie shadows across the cobblestone streets, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The air was thick with anticipation as I met up with Miguel, Sophia, and Tomas at the entrance of the cemetery. The moon hung low, illuminating the weathered gravestones like a ghostly spotlight. "Are you ready for this?" Sophia whispered, her eyes wide with apprehension. "Ready as I'll ever be," I replied, trying to mask my own nerves. "Let's start by checking Don Luis's section. That's where we're most likely to find something." We ventured deeper into the cemetery, the crunch of gravel beneath our feet echoing in the stillness. My heart pounded in my chest as we approached the rows of headstones. But as we neared Don Luis's area, I felt a wave of unease. Something was off. "Look," Miguel said, pointing. "His grave, it's not well kept like the others." Sophia squinted, trying to make sense of the sight before us. "This isn't right. Don Luis took great pride in his work. Why would he let his own grave fall into disrepair?" Suddenly, a gust of wind rustled through the trees, sending a shiver down my spine. "Did you feel that?" I asked, glancing around nervously. A sense of foreboding hung in the air like a thick fog. Sophia stepped closer to the edge of the gravesite, her expression turning pale. "I don't know how to explain it, but I feel something. Like a presence." She closed her eyes and I could see her shivering despite the warm evening air. "Maybe we should go back," Tomas suggested, his bravado waning. "This place feels wrong." But before I could respond, something caught my eye, a flicker of movement among the shadows. I turned, and for a brief instant I swear I saw a figure. It was Don Luis, or at least a shadow of him, wandering among the gravestones, his lips moving as if he were trying to speak. "Did you see that?" I exclaimed, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's him." Sophia's eyes widened, and she took a hesitant step forward. "He looks scared, Don Luis," I called out, my voice trembling. "What happened to you?" But the figure melted into the darkness, and with it, the whispers of help echoed through the still night. "We have to find out what's going on," I said, determination surging within me. "He needs us." Miguel stepped forward, his face set with resolve. "Let's find the truth, together." With a shared sense of purpose, we gathered our courage, ready to uncover the mystery that had ensnared our town and our friend. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over San Miguel, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The disappearance of Don Luis hung over us like a thick fog, and I could sense the tension in the air as Miguel, Sophia, Tomas, and I gathered in our usual spot at the library, a dusty old building that smelled of forgotten stories and musty pages. "Okay, everyone, we need to figure out what's going on here," Miguel said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. He flipped through a stack of weathered books, their spines cracked and faded with age. "There has to be something about Don Luis, or the cemetery in these records." I leaned closer, peering over his shoulder as he scanned the pages. What if he's in trouble? What if he's been kidnapped or something worse? My heart raced at the thought. The whispers from the townsfolk echoed in my mind. Dark rumors of the Covero's past and strange occurrences at the cemetery. "Here," Miguel exclaimed suddenly, pointing to a passage that caught his eye. "Look at this. It mentions a series of strange rituals that have been tied to the cemetery for decades. People used to believe that certain bodies were taken to be used in some kind of black magic." Sophia's eyes widened as she whispered, "Rituals? You mean like sacrifices?" "Exactly," Miguel replied, his brow furrowed. "And the last entry here is dated just a few weeks ago. That's when the first rumors about Don Luis started spreading." Tomas, who had been leaning against a nearby shelf, scoffed. "Come on, guys. You really believe this nonsense? It's just old folklore. There has to be a rational explanation for his disappearance." "Maybe," I replied, glancing at Sophia, who was visibly shaken. "But we can't ignore the signs. Something feels off. I mean, we saw those neglected graves at the cemetery. Don Luis always took care of them." Sophia shivered, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt it too. Something was watching us, like a dark shadow lurking just beyond our sight. Her eyes darted nervously around the library, as if the shadows themselves might come to life. "Let's not jump to conclusions," Tomas insisted, though I could see the uncertainty creeping into his expression. "We need more evidence before we start believing in ghosts and curses." As if on cue, a cold draft swept through the library, rustling the pages of the books around us. I felt a chill in the air, and Sophia gasped. "Did you feel that?" "Yeah, it's freezing," I admitted, my breath visible in the sudden chill. "We should head back to the cemetery tonight. If there's something going on, we need to find out what it is." Miguel nodded, determination etched across his face. "Let's do it. We can't let fear stop us. We're going to uncover the truth about Don Luis." Later that night, armed with flashlights and a mix of excitement and dread, we made our way to the cemetery. The moon cast an ethereal light over the tombstones, and the wind howled like a mournful spirit. As we stepped through the wrought iron gates, a sense of foreboding washed over me. "Look," I said, pointing to the rows of graves. "These plots are all in disarray. Don Luis would never allow this." Sophia shivered, glancing around nervously. "I don't like this. It feels wrong." As we ventured deeper into the cemetery, the air thickened with an unsettling energy. Suddenly, we all froze, our flashlights illuminating a figure in the distance. It looked like Don Luis, his form flickering in and out of view, as if he were caught between our world and another. "Is that?" Miguel began, but before he could finish, the figure turned toward us, its lips moving in silent pleas. "Help me," it seemed to whisper, the sound echoing in our minds rather than through the air. I felt my heart race. "Did you hear that?" I asked breathlessly. "Yes," Sophia replied, her eyes wide with fear. "We have to help him. He's in trouble." "Wait," Tomas shouted, his voice cutting through the tension. "What if it's a trap? What if this is what they want us to see?" But I knew we couldn't turn back now. The urgency in that ghostly whisper compelled us forward. "We have to find out what happened to him," I urged, gripping the flashlight tightly. "He needs us." As we exchanged determined looks, I felt a connection between us, a shared resolve that nothing could break. Whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. The evening air was thick with tension as we stood outside the old, crumbling house of the curandera. I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on my shoulders, the whispers of the souls trapped in the town echoing in my mind. As I glanced at my friends, I sensed their apprehension mirrored my own. We had come to seek the wisdom of an expert, someone who could help us understand the dark forces at play. "Are you sure about this?" Tomas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He shifted from foot to foot, casting nervous glances at the shadows that danced in the flickering light of the lanterns lining the path to the curandera's door. "Look, we need answers," I replied, trying to mask my own uncertainty. If there's any chance that she can help us understand what's happening to Don Luis and the missing souls, we have to do this. Sophia, who had been unusually quiet, stepped forward. I can feel something in the air, a heaviness. It's not just the fear of the unknown, it's something more. Her eyes were wide, and I could tell she was already picking up on the energy surrounding us. Miguel nodded in agreement. Let's just get this over with. The sooner we know what we're up against, the better. He pushed the door open, and we were greeted by the earthy scent of sage and something sweet like honey. The dim light inside illuminated the walls, adorned with talismans and artifacts that seemed to hum with a life of their own. Welcome, children of the night, the curandera said, her voice smooth and calming. She was an older woman, her silver hair cascading down her back and her eyes sparkled with a wisdom that felt ancient. I have been expecting you. Expecting us? I stammered, glancing back at my friends. How did you know? The spirits have been restless, she replied, gesturing for us to sit on the worn cushions scattered around the room. They speak to me, guiding me to those who seek the truth. As we settled in, I felt a chill run down my spine. We're looking for answers about Don Luis and the strange occurrences in town, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. People are acting strangely, and we think it's connected to him. The curandera nodded solemnly. The veil between this world and the next has thinned. There are forces at play here, forces that seek revenge. She looked at each of us, her gaze lingering on Sophia. You, dear, have a special connection to the spirits. I've seen things, Sophia confessed, her voice trembling. I had a vision of Don Luis. He was terrified, surrounded by shadows. The curandera leaned closer, her expression serious. Those shadows are the souls of the wronged, trapped in a cycle of vengeance. They cannot find peace until their stories are told. What do we do? Miguel asked, desperation creeping into his tone. We need to help them. We need to help Don Luis. The first step is to confront the darkness, she said, her voice firm. You must understand that the souls are linked to the living. Some in this town have been touched by the darkness, their actions influenced by the entities seeking to harness their pain. What do you mean? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. Those who act strangely may be under its influence, she explained. They are puppets, their strings pulled by a force that feeds on fear and anguish. You will need to find the source. Tomas, who had been silently absorbing the information, finally spoke up. How do we break this cycle? How do we free Don Luis? The curandera's eyes softened. To free him, you must uncover the truth of his involvement with the shadows. He made choices in desperation, but there is still hope. You must gather the stories of the souls, give them voice. Gather their stories? I echoed, trying to make sense of it all. How do we do that? Listen to the whispers of the town, she instructed. Seek out those who have lost loved ones. Their pain is the key to unlocking the past. As we left her home, the weight of her words hung heavy in the air. I looked at my friends, determination igniting within me. We need to talk to the townsfolk. We need to hear their stories. Let's start with that old man near the bakery, Tomas suggested. I've heard he lost his wife last year. Good idea, Miguel agreed. The more we know, the better chance we have of saving Don Luis. Sophia nodded, her face set with resolve. And maybe, just maybe, we can help those souls find peace. With a collective sense of purpose, we stepped into the night, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. The echoes of the past beckoned us, and we were determined to answer their call. As the moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over San Miguel, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The air was thick with tension, and the whispers of the townsfolk haunted my thoughts. We need to find out what happened to Don Luis, I insisted, my voice steady despite the unease gnawing at me. Sophia nodded, her expression serious. I keep seeing these flashes, shadows. It's like they're trying to tell me something. She paused, glancing around as if expecting the very shadows she spoke of to manifest before us. I think they're trying to warn us. Tomas, ever the skeptic, rolled his eyes. Come on, Sophia. You can't seriously believe in this ghost stuff. It's all in your head. His dismissive tone grated on my nerves, but I knew better than to let his cynicism derail our mission. Maybe it is, I said, but we can't ignore what's happening in town. If people are being possessed, we need to act. Now. Miguel, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. I found something in the library. Old records about the cemetery, and, well, let's just say there have been strange happenings associated with it. He shifted his weight, glancing at each of us. There are old accounts of rituals. They spoke of bodies being taken from graves for purposes beyond our understanding. The weight of his words settled heavily on my shoulders. Rituals? What kind of rituals? Rituals involving power and sacrifice, he replied, his voice dropping to a whisper as if the very walls had ears. People used to believe that the dead could be summoned for strength or to settle old scores. Sophia's face paled and I could see her mind racing. What if Don Luis was involved in something like that? What if he was forced into it? Or worse, Tomas added, crossing his arms defensively. What if he was part of it all along? Ignoring Tomas's skepticism, I felt a surge of determination. Then we need to find out what happened to him. We can't let fear dictate our actions. Not now. As we walked through the dimly lit streets, the atmosphere grew heavier. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, forming shapes that danced along the cobblestones. I glanced at Sophia, her face drawn tight with concentration. What do you see? I don't know, she replied, shivering slightly. It's all jumbled. But there's someone, angry. They're looking for justice. Justice? Miguel echoed, his brow furrowed in concern. What does that even mean in this context? I think it means we're too late, Sophia whispered, her voice trembling. What if the souls are trapped? What if they want revenge? That thought sent a chill racing through me. We need to talk to someone who might know more, someone who understands the supernatural. Are you suggesting we go to a curandera? Tomas asked, skepticism tinged with a hint of fear. Why not? I shot back. We're dealing with forces we don't understand. It's worth a shot. With a reluctant nod, Tomas agreed. Fine, but I still think this is ridiculous. As we made our way to the curandera's home, the night deepened around us. The streets were eerily quiet, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. Suddenly, Sophia stopped in her tracks, her eyes wide. Did you feel that? Feel what? I asked, my heart racing. It's like the air is charged, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Something is coming. Before I could respond, a low hum filled the air, vibrating through my bones. I glanced at Miguel, who looked just as uneasy as I felt. What is that? I asked, my voice shaking. I don't know, but we need to hurry, he urged, quickening his pace. When we reached the curandera's door, I knocked hesitantly. The door creaked open, revealing an elderly woman with deep-set eyes and an aura of wisdom that made me feel both comforted and unnerved. You seek answers, she said, her voice a raspy whisper. But be warned, the truth can be a double-edged sword. Don Luis has disappeared, I explained, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. And we think it's connected to something dark. Darkness often hides in plain sight, the curandera replied, studying our faces. The souls of the wronged are restless. You must tread carefully, for they may seek vengeance. Vengeance? I repeated, my heart racing. She nodded gravely. Yes, and once awakened, it can consume you whole. If you wish to help Don Luis, you must first understand the gravity of what you're facing. As we stood there, the weight of her words settled in, and I knew we were standing on the precipice of something greater than ourselves. The darkness was closing in, and we had to act before it was too late. The air in the room felt thick with anticipation as we gathered around the small table, the flickering candle casting eerie shadows on the walls. My heart raced as I glanced at my friends, Miguel, Sophia, and Tomas, each of us knowing that this seance could lead us to the truth about Don Luis. The flickering shadows seemed to dance in time with our rising anxiety. Are you sure about this? Tomas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I could see the skepticism etched on his face, but deep down, I knew he was just as curious as the rest of us. It's the only way, I replied firmly, trying to mask my own fear. We need to contact Don Luis and find out what really happened to him. Sophia, you have to lead us. Sophia nodded, her eyes wide with determination. I can feel the energy in this place. If Don Luis is out there, I can reach him. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Let's hold hands, Miguel suggested, his grip tightening around my fingers. I could feel the warmth of his palm, grounding me, even as the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Tomas reluctantly took hold of Sophia's hand, his expression a mix of dread and curiosity. Sophia began to chant softly, her voice echoing in the stillness. Spirits of the beyond, we call upon you. We seek the truth. We seek the light. The candle flickered violently, and I felt an electric charge in the air, as if something was pushing against us from the other side. Suddenly, the flame flared, illuminating a shadow that darted just outside our field of vision. I gasped, and a chill ran down my spine. Did you see that? I exclaimed, my voice trembling. Stay focused, Sophia urged, her eyes still closed. Don Luis, if you can hear us, please show yourself. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. Just when I thought we had reached an impasse, a whisper echoed in the air, soft yet urgent. Help me. Did you hear that? Miguel asked, his eyes wide. Yes, I replied, my voice shaking. It's him, it's Don Luis. Sophia's expression shifted from concentration to fear. He's trapped. Something is holding him back. The candle flickered violently again, and I felt a cold wind sweep through the room, extinguishing the flame. In the darkness, I could hear Sophia's breathing quicken. No, we need light. Just as panic began to set in, a faint glow emerged from the corner of the room. The light pulsated, growing brighter, and within it, a figure began to take shape. It was Don Luis, his face filled with anguish and desperation. You must listen, he pleaded, his voice echoing through the suffocating silence. The entity, it needs me. Why? What does it want? I shouted, desperate for answers as the glow flickered, revealing his tortured expression. It feeds on souls. It needs my energy to complete its ritual. His voice trembled, and I could see the pain etched into his features. I was forced into this. I never wanted to harm anyone. I thought I could protect the town by sacrificing my own freedom. A wave of horror washed over me as I processed his words. But we can help you. We can break this curse. No, he cried, his figure wavering. You don't understand. If you try to break the bond, it will unleash its wrath. It will come for you. Sophia gasped, clutching her head as if she were in immense pain. I see it. I see the darkness. It's coming. Don't let fear control you, I urged, trying to keep my voice steady. We can do this together. But the figure of Don Luis began to fade, his expression one of despair. You must find the truth, but beware. The entity is more powerful than you know. With that, the light flickered once more and then extinguished, leaving us in complete darkness. I could hear Sophia gasping for breath, and I felt the weight of dread settle over us. What just happened? Tomas whispered, his voice shaking. We need to figure out what he meant, I said, my heart racing. We have to uncover the truth about the entity and save Don Luis before it's too late. As the shadows closed in around us, I knew we were on the brink of something far more dangerous than we had ever anticipated. As the moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the ancient chapel, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The air was thick with tension, and the weight of what we were about to face pressed heavily on my chest. Miguel, Sophia, Tomas, and I gathered in a tight circle, the flickering light of a single candle illuminating our anxious faces. This was it, the moment we'd been preparing for, and yet I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread. Are we really going through with this? Tomas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I could see the uncertainty in his eyes, the fear that gnawed at him. It mirrored my own. We have to, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Don Luis needs us. We can't let that entity keep him trapped any longer. Sophia nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a small talisman she had found in the library. I can feel its presence. It's powerful, but we have to be stronger. We have to remember why we're doing this. Miguel placed a reassuring hand on Sophia's shoulder. Together we can do this. We've already come this far, haven't we? We can't back down now. His confidence was infectious, and I felt a flicker of hope amidst the growing darkness. As we pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the chapel, a rush of cold air greeted us, almost as if the building itself was exhaling a long-held breath. The interior was dimly lit, the shadows dancing along the stone walls, creating grotesque figures that seemed to mock our bravery. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. Remember, we stick together, I said, trying to sound more authoritative than I felt. We can't let it divide us. We stepped further inside, the sound of our footsteps echoing ominously. Suddenly, an oppressive silence enveloped us, and I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It was as if the air had thickened, making it difficult to breathe. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I pushed the fear aside. We had to confront whatever awaited us. As we reached the altar at the center of the chapel, the atmosphere shifted. I could feel the energy crackling in the air, a palpable tension that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It was then that I noticed it, a dark shadow pooling in the corner, writhing and twisting as if alive. "Do you see that?" Sophia whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "It's here." Before I could respond, the shadow surged forward, taking shape before us. I stumbled back, my heart racing. "What do we do?" I shouted, panic rising in my throat. "Stay calm," Miguel urged, stepping forward. "We need to confront it. It feeds on our fear." The entity laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the hollow space. "Brave little children, do you think you can save him?" Its voice was a distorted mockery, sending a wave of dread crashing over me. "We're here for Don Luis," I shouted back, trying to sound braver than I felt. "You won't take him from us." The entity's laughter grew louder, and it began to loom over us, its form becoming more defined. "You have no idea what you're up against. The power I wield is beyond your comprehension." I glanced at my friends, their faces a mix of fear and determination. "We have to focus on Don Luis," I urged. "If we can reach him, maybe we can break through its hold." Sophia closed her eyes, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I can try to connect with him," she said, her voice trembling. "But I'll need your support. We have to stand together." "Okay," I said, taking a deep breath. "On 3, we all reach out. 1, 2, 3. We stretched out our hands, forming a circle, and I felt the warmth of their presence grounding me. As we concentrated, I could feel the energy shift again, more intense this time. The entity recoiled slightly, sensing our combined strength. "Foolish mortals," it hissed, its voice dripping with disdain. "You think your bond can rival mine?" A wave of fear washed over me as the shadows twisted, and I felt my own insecurities clawing at my mind. Images of failure, of losing my friends flooded my thoughts. "No," I shouted, shaking my head to dispel the darkness creeping in. "We are stronger than you." Tomas stepped forward, his voice steadier than before. "You don't understand what family means. We won't let you take him." The entity hesitated, and in that moment of vulnerability, I knew we had to push forward. "Don Luis, we're here," I called out, my voice echoing through the chapel. "We're coming for you." The shadows writhed violently, but as we focused on our bond and the love we had for each other, I felt a surge of courage. The entity faltered, and I realized that it was not invincible. It was fueled by fear, and we had to face it head on. "Together," Miguel shouted, and with that rallying cry, we united our voices, calling for Don Luis and strengthening our resolve against the darkness. The confrontation had just begun, but I could feel a change in the air, a hint of hope amidst the encroaching terror. The air was thick with tension as we stood inside the ancient chapel, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows on the cracked stone walls. My heart raced, pounding in my chest as I could feel the malevolent energy of the entity pulsing around us. It was as if the very walls were alive with its dark presence, whispering threats and taunts that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. "Stay close," I whispered to my friends, my voice barely above a breath. Paloma, her eyes wide with fear, nodded, while Miguel tightened his grip on the amulet he had found in the library. Tomas, however, appeared pale and hesitating, his face a mask of uncertainty. "I don't know if I can do this," he said, his voice quivering. "What if it takes me too?" "Tomas, listen to me," Miguel urged, stepping closer to him. "This is our chance to save Don Luis and put an end to this nightmare. We can't let fear control us." As Miguel spoke, I felt a shiver run down my spine, and I realized that the entity was already probing our minds, attempting to exploit our fears. Suddenly, it manifested before us, a dark silhouette swirling with shadows, its voice a haunting echo that reverberated through the chapel. "Foolish children," it mocked. "You think you can save him? You are nothing but pawns in a game far beyond your comprehension." I felt the chill of its words seep into my bones. "We're not afraid of you," I shouted, trying to mask my own terror. "We know what you've done." The entity laughed, a sound that chilled my blood. "You know nothing. Don Luis is mine, and he has willingly sacrificed himself to protect this town. You cannot comprehend the power of the deal he made." "No," Sophia cried out, suddenly stepping forward. "He didn't do it willingly. He was trapped, just like the rest of you. The entity's form flickered, and within that moment, I could see the faces of the lost souls swirling around it, their eyes filled with pain and longing. It was then that I felt a sudden surge of connection, a thread of understanding binding me to them. His confidence was infectious, and I felt a flicker of hope amidst the growing darkness. As we pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the chapel, a rush of cold air greeted us, almost as if the building itself was exhaling a long-held breath. The interior was dimly lit, the shadows dancing along the stone walls, creating grotesque figures that seemed to mock our bravery. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "Remember, we stick together," I said, trying to sound more authoritative than I felt. "We can't let it divide us." We stepped further inside, the sound of our footsteps echoing ominously. Suddenly, an oppressive silence enveloped us, and I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It was as if the air had thickened, making it difficult to breathe. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I pushed the fear aside. We had to confront whatever awaited us. As we reached the altar at the center of the chapel, the atmosphere shifted. I could feel the energy crackling in the air, a palpable tension that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It was then that I noticed it, a dark shadow pooling in the corner, writhing and twisting as if alive. "Do you see that?" Sophia whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "It's here." Before I could respond, the shadow surged forward, taking shape before us. I stumbled back, my heart racing. "What do we do?" I shouted, panic rising in my throat. "Stay calm," Miguel urged, stepping forward. "We need to confront it. It feeds on our fear." The entity laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the hollow space. "Brave little children, do you think you can save him?" Its voice was a distorted mockery, sending a wave of dread crashing over me. "We're here for Don Luis," I shouted back, trying to sound braver than I felt. "You won't take him from us." The entity's laughter grew louder, and it began to loom over us, its form becoming more defined. "You have no idea what you're up against. The power I wield is beyond your comprehension." I glanced at my friends, their faces a mix of fear and determination. "We have to focus on Don Luis," I urged. "If we can reach him, maybe we can break through its hold." Sophia closed her eyes, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I can try to connect with him," she said, her voice trembling. "But I'll need your support. We have to stand together." "Okay," I said, taking a deep breath. "On 3, we all reach out. 1, 2, 3. We stretched out our hands, forming a circle, and I felt the warmth of their presence grounding me. As we concentrated, I could feel the energy shift again, more intense this time. The entity recoiled slightly, sensing our combined strength. "Foolish mortals," it hissed, its voice dripping with disdain. "You think your bond can rival mine?" A wave of fear washed over me as the shadows twisted, and I felt my own insecurities clawing at my mind. Images of failure, of losing my friends flooded my thoughts. No, they have stories that must be told. If we share their truths, maybe we can summon their strength against the entity. Tomas nodded, his resolve hardening. "Let's do it. We have to honor them. They deserved better than what happened." We gathered in a tight circle, the weight of our purpose anchoring us. I could feel the air crackling with energy, as if the walls of the chapel were listening. "What do we do first?" I asked, glancing at each of my friends, hoping one of them would have the answer. "Let's start with Don Luis," Miguel suggested, his eyes searching mine for agreement. "He's been protecting this town, making sacrifices we didn't even know about. We need to tell his story." I took a deep breath and began, my voice trembling but resolute. Don Luis was more than just the town's gravedigger. He was a guardian, a protector of the souls that came to rest here. He made a pact to keep the peace, even if it meant losing himself. As the words left my mouth, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. The shadows around us thickened, swirling like a tempest. Sophia closed her eyes, focusing her energy. "Listen, spirits, we honor you. Your voices matter. Speak through us." A chill raced through the room, and suddenly other voices joined mine, echoing through the chapel. "We were taken." A whisper floated through the air. "We were forgotten." "Yes," I shouted, my heart racing as I felt the essence of the spirits surrounding us. "You deserve to be remembered. Your lives mattered." Tomas stepped forward, his voice breaking. "My mother, she was one of you. She was taken too soon. I won't let her memory fade away. She deserves to be known." His emotion fueled the energy in the room, and the air shimmered with power. Sophia's eyes flew open, her face a mask of concentration. I can feel them. They're here. They want us to remember their stories. We need to connect with them. They can help us. We began to share more tales, each one a thread woven into the tapestry of the lives lost to the darkness. As we spoke, the shadows around us began to flicker and pulse, responding to our words. I could sense the spirits gathering, their energy intertwining with our own, creating a bond stronger than fear. Keep going, Miguel urged, his voice loud and commanding. Bring them forth. We will not let their stories die. With every word, the tension in the room intensified. The whispers grew louder, morphing into a chorus of voices. We are here, they cried. We will not be silenced. Sophia, eyes shining with fervor, called out, We need your strength. Our pain is your pain, and we will fight together. I could feel the power surging through us, a collective force rising against the encroaching darkness. The walls of the chapel trembled, and for a brief moment, I caught sight of shadowy figures swirling within the light, their faces filled with both sorrow and determination. Together, I shouted, my voice breaking the barriers of fear. Together, we can break the chains that bind you. As we united our voices, the energy in the room reached a fever pitch. The spirits began to manifest, their forms shimmering like flickering flames. I could see their faces, twisted with pain but filled with hope, as they began to gather strength from our words. Let's channel their stories, let's bring them forth. Tomas cried, his heart finally at peace as he called out to his mother, who stood there, ethereal and radiant. In that moment, I knew we were on the precipice of something powerful. The truth was spilling forth, and with it came the promise of liberation. We were no longer just a group of friends facing a malevolent entity. We were the voices of the forgotten, and together we would rewrite the fate that had bound us all. The air inside the old chapel was thick with dread, a palpable tension that pressed against my chest. I could almost hear the whispers of the lost souls swirling around us, echoing their torment. My heart raced as I glanced at my friends, their faces pale and determined. Miguel clutched an ancient amulet he had found in the library, its surface etched with symbols that glimmered faintly in the dim light. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with apprehension. I nodded, though I could feel the weight of fear creeping into my thoughts. "We have to do this. For Don Luis. For everyone," I replied, trying to muster the courage I felt slipping away. Sophia shivered beside me, her eyes wide. "I can feel it. The entity is here. It's watching us." She glanced around, her instincts on high alert. "Then we need to act fast," Tomas added, his voice barely above a whisper. "We can't let it take any more of us." Just as we steeled ourselves for the confrontation, the very air around us shifted, and a bone-chilling presence enveloped the room. A dark shadow loomed before us, pulsating with malevolence. The entity had arrived, its form flickering like a flame in the wind. "You think you can stop me?" it hissed, its voice echoing like thunder. "You are nothing but children playing with forces beyond your comprehension. Watch us," I shot back, trying to sound braver than I felt. "We know what you've done. We will expose your lies." As if in response, the entity surged forward, a wave of darkness crashing against us. "You think you can face the truth? You are all so naive." Miguel stepped forward, raising the amulet. "This belonged to Don Luis," he shouted, the amulet glowing brighter as he spoke. "He protected this town, and we will not let you twist his sacrifice." The entity recoiled slightly, its form flickering as it seemed to sense the power of the amulet. "Foolish boy, you don't understand the pact he made, his freedom for your peace." "What do you mean?" Tomas demanded, stepping closer, anger flashing in his eyes. "He was a prisoner. Why didn't anyone tell us?" "Because he was a guardian turned traitor," the entity sneered. "He sacrificed his very soul to keep your pathetic lives safe, and now he will be the key to my power." A chill ran through me. "No, Don Luis would never betray us," I declared, hoping to drown out the entity's words. Sophia's voice trembled as she spoke. "But he was involved with the trafficking, wasn't he? He did it to survive, to protect himself and the town." The entity laughed, a sound filled with malice. "You see, he made a choice, just as you will soon have to make one. Sacrifice one of your own, or watch the rest perish." I felt a surge of anger mixed with sorrow. "We won't sacrifice anyone. We'll find another way." Just then, the entity lunged forward, its dark tendrils wrapping around Tomas, pulling him closer. "Join me, Tomas. You can be more than just a pawn. Embrace the darkness." "No," I screamed, reaching out to him. "Fight it, Tomas. We're stronger together." With a flick of its wrist, the entity threw Tomas across the room. He landed hard, gasping. I can't do this." "Don't say that," Miguel shouted, rushing to help him. "You're not alone. We're all in this together." As I looked at my friends, I could feel the bond between us strengthening. We had faced so much together, and we couldn't let fear tear us apart now. "We need to summon the spirits of the victims," I said, my voice firm. "They might help us break this entity's hold." "Do you really think that will work?" Sophia asked, her eyes darting nervously. "It has to," I replied, determination bubbling within me. "The spirits deserve to be heard. We need to give them a voice." The entity roared in frustration, its form shifting violently. "You will regret this. You will all pay." "Not if we stand united," Miguel shouted, holding the amulet high. As we began to chant, I felt the connection between us grow stronger. I could almost see the spirits gathering, their presence igniting a flicker of hope within the darkness. We had to confront the truth, not just for ourselves, but for every soul lost to this horrific cycle. We would break the chains that bound us all. As the chaos unfolded around us, I could feel the pulsating energy of fear and desperation thickening the air. We had fought so hard to uncover the truth, and now, standing in the ancient chapel, I could sense the weight of our choices pressing down on us. My heart raced as I clutched Sophia's hand, feeling the warmth of her determination beside me. "Do you think we can really reach him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The shadows danced around us, and I could see the flicker of doubt in Miguel's eyes. "We have to try, Paloma," he replied, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Don Luis is still in there somewhere. We just need to break the hold this entity has on him." Sophia, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and resolve, stepped forward. "I can feel him. He's trapped, and the only way we can help him is by reaching out to him. I have to try to communicate with him directly." Tomas, still grappling with the revelation about his mother's spirit, nodded. "Let's do this together. We owe it to him and to everyone who has suffered because of this." As we formed a circle, I felt the air thrum with energy. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on my shoulders. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "Sophia, are you ready?" I asked, watching her closely. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady despite the tremors in her hands. "Everyone, focus. We need to channel our energy together. I can initiate the connection, but I need you all with me." We joined hands, feeling the warmth and strength of our bond, and I concentrated on the flickering shadows around us. Sophia closed her eyes and began to speak, her voice soft but commanding. "Don Luis, if you can hear me, we're here to help you. We know the truth. We know you're trapped." The air grew colder, and an eerie silence enveloped us. For a moment I feared that we had failed, but then a whisper echoed through the chapel, chilling me to the bone. "Help, me," Sophia gasped, her eyes snapping open. "He's here. I can feel him." I strained to listen, trying to hear the faint echoes of his voice. "Don Luis, what happened to you?" I urged, my heart pounding in my chest. I made a choice," the voice came, barely a whisper, filled with sorrow. "To protect the town. To keep the darkness at bay. But it has chained me here." "No," Tomas shouted, his voice breaking. "You sacrificed everything for us. We can't let this continue. You deserve to be free." "Tomas, wait," I exclaimed, but he was already stepping forward, his eyes wide with determination. "What do we need to do to break your chains? Tell us." "Only the truth can set me free," Don Luis's voice echoed, laced with pain. "The pact I made, it binds me, but it can be broken." Sophia's expression shifted as she closed her eyes again, focusing. "Then let us speak your truth. Let us tell the stories of those who were lost. We can free you and bring peace to their souls." The shadows around us began to swirl, and I felt a rush of energy as we prepared to make our stand. "Together," I said, squeezing Miguel's hand tightly. "We can do this." "Together," he echoed, and the resolve in his voice gave me strength. As we began to recite the stories of the victims, the chapel filled with energy. I could see the outlines of souls emerging from the shadows, their faces twisted in anguish. But as we spoke, their expressions softened, and I felt a surge of hope. Don Luis, we won't let your sacrifice be in vain, I shouted, feeling the intensity of our collective will. We honor you and seek the truth. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the center of the chapel, and I felt the presence of the entity begin to falter. No, it roared, its voice filled with rage. You cannot break the pact. But as we continued, I felt a change in the air. Don Luis, we believe in you, I cried, my voice rising above the chaos. Let the truth be known. You are not alone. And then it happened. A wave of energy surged through us, and I felt the spirits join us, their voices rising in a chorus of unity. The light grew brighter, and I could see Don Luis's figure materializing, a look of peace washing over his face. Thank you, he whispered, his voice now clear and resolute. I am free. In that moment, I realized the true power of our friendship and the strength of our spirits. As the entity wailed in fury, we stood together, united against the darkness. The chapel transformed, the shadows retreating, and I knew we had not only saved Don Luis, but also freed the souls that had been trapped for far too long. As the last remnants of the entity faded, I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by the release of energy. We did it, I breathed, tears streaming down my face. Together, Miguel said, his voice filled with awe. And as the chapel stood transformed into a sanctuary of peace, I knew we would carry Don Luis's legacy with us, forever honoring the sacrifices made in the name of love and friendship.